people who drain your energy the most are often the people who contribute to your life the least. The ones who demand constant access to your time are usually the ones who are never available when you need support. The individuals who expect immediate responses to their messages are typically the ones who ignore yours for days. This is not coincidence. It is the natural result of having no boundaries and teaching people that your needs do not matter. You have created a life where you are everyone else's priority but no one's, where you are everyone else's solution but no one solves anything for you, where you are everyone else's support system but you have no support. The most painful part is that you did this to yourself. By refusing to value your own time, energy, and emotional well-being enough to protect them from people who only take and never give. There exists a fundamental truth about human nature that most people never recognize until it transforms their entire existence. The moment you stop being constantly available to everyone and everything, you trigger something profound in the human psyche, both in others and in yourself. This is not merely about time management or setting boundaries. This is about awakening to a psychological principle that governs all human relationships and determines the very quality of your life. Think about water. When it flows everywhere, spreading thin across vast surfaces, it has little power. But when that same water is channeled, focused, and directed through a narrow passage, it can cut through solid rock. Your availability works the same way. When you scatter your presence, your attention, and your energy across every request, every demand, every perceived need of others, you become like that scattered water, present everywhere, but powerful nowhere. The human mind operates on ancient principles of scarcity and abundance. What we can easily obtain, we unconsciously devalue. What requires effort, what demands respect, what cannot be taken for granted. This becomes precious. Your constant availability has been unconsciously training everyone around you to devalue your time, your attention, and ultimately you as a person. They do not do this maliciously. They do this because the human psyche naturally assigns worth based on accessibility. Carl Jung understood that we project onto others what we cannot see in ourselves. When you are always available, people project their own lack of boundaries onto you. They see someone who does not value their own time, and they unconsciously mirror this back by not valuing your time either. This creates a cycle where your generosity becomes the very thing that diminishes your worth in the eyes of others. But the moment you step back, the moment you become selective about when and how you share your presence, everything shifts. The scarcity principle activates. People begin to wonder about your thoughts, your time, your attention. They start to recognize that access to you is not a given, but a privilege. This is not manipulation, this is psychology. Your need to be constantly available stems from deep psychological patterns that were likely formed in your earliest years. Perhaps you learned that love was conditional on service. Perhaps you discovered that being useful was the only way to guarantee connection. Maybe you internalized the belief that your worth as a human being depended on how much you could give to others. These patterns run deeper than conscious thought. They live in what Jung called the shadow, those aspects of ourselves that we have pushed into unconsciousness because they feel too threatening to acknowledge. The shadow of the constantly available person often contains a terrified child who believes that saying no means being abandoned. This child learned to equate love with usefulness, connection with service, and worth with self-sacrifice. But here is what that child could not understand. True love does not require you to disappear. Authentic connection does not demand your constant presence. Real worth comes not from what you can do for others, but from who you are when you are not doing anything for anyone else. The process Jung called individuation, becoming who you truly are, rather than who others need you to be, requires you to confront these shadow patterns. It demands that you face the discomfort of potentially disappointing others in order to honor yourself. This is not selfish, this is necessary for psychological health and authentic relationships. When you begin to limit your availability, you will feel guilt. You will feel anxiety. You will hear internal voices telling you that you are being mean, selfish, or uncaring. These voices are not speaking truth, they are speaking fear. They are the remnants of old programming that kept you safe in childhood, but now keeps you trapped in patterns that no longer serve you, a collective unconscious. That shared psychological inheritance of humanity contains powerful scripts about service, sacrifice, and availability. Many of these scripts were useful for survival in earlier times when communities were small and interdependent. But in our current world, where we can be connected to hundreds or thousands of people through technology, these same scripts can destroy our psychological well-being. You must understand that your compulsive availability is not generosity. It is often a form of addiction. You have become addicted to being needed, because being needed feels like being loved. But this is a counterfeit version of love. True love exists between two whole people who choose each other, not between one person who gives everything and another who takes everything. The energy exchange in relationships must be reciprocal to be sustainable. When you are always available, always giving, always serving, you create an imbalanced energy system. You become the sun, while others become planets that orbit around your constant light and warmth. This seems generous, but it actually prevents others from developing their own inner light. It keeps them dependent and keeps you exhausted. Your constant availability has shifted the power dynamics in your relationships in ways you may not have realized. Power in relationships is not about dominance or control. It is about the ability to influence outcomes through choice. When you are always available, you remove your own choice from the equation. You become predictable, and predictability reduces your influence. Think about the people in your life who command respect. They are not necessarily the most giving or the most available. They are the people who have clear boundaries, who know their own worth, and who share their time and energy intentionally, rather than compulsively. They have maintained their power of choice, and others respond to this by treating them with greater respect. When you reclaim your availability, when you become selective about when, how, and to whom you give your time and energy, you are not building walls, you are installing gates. Walls keep everyone out indiscriminately. Gates open and close with conscious intention. They allow you to be fully present with the people and activities that align with your values and goals, while protecting you from those that drain your energy without giving anything meaningful in return. This transformation requires you to face your deepest fears about connection and belonging. You must be willing to risk some relationships in order to improve all of them. You must be willing to disappoint some people in order to finally start honoring yourself. This is terrifying for most people because it activates our primal fear of abandonment. But here is what fear does not tell you. The people who truly value you will respect your boundaries. The people who only valued your constant availability were not really in relationship with you. They were in relationship with what you could do for them. When you stop being constantly available, you will quickly discover the difference between those who love you. The guilt you feel when you first start saying no is not evidence that you are doing something wrong. It is evidence that you are doing something different. Your nervous system, trained for years to equate availability with safety, will interpret any change as a threat. This is normal. This is temporary. This is the price of freedom. As you practice becoming less available, you will notice that your relationship with yourself begins to change. You will start to respect your own time because you are protecting it. You will begin to value your own energy because you are no longer giving it away carelessly. You will develop what Jung called a relationship with the self, that deeper, more authentic part of you that exists beyond your roles and functions. This process will activate what Jung describes as the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism that allows opposites to be held in creative tension. You will learn to be both connected and autonomous, both generous and boundaried, both loving and self-respecting. This is not about finding balance. It is about finding integration. When you stop being constantly available, the people around you will go through predictable stages of reaction. First comes confusion. They will not understand why you are suddenly different. Then comes testing. They will push against your new boundaries to see if they are real or just temporary. Some will become angry or manipulative, trying to guilt you back into your old patterns. Others will respect your changes immediately and even express relief that you are finally taking care of yourself. Pay attention to these reactions. They will tell you everything you need to know about the true nature of your relationships. The people who support your growth toward healthy boundaries are the people who actually care about your well-being. The people who fight against your boundaries are the people who benefited from your previous dysfunction. In your professional life, you may be surprised by how opportunities multiply when you are no longer desperate for any opportunity. When you stop saying yes to everything, you create space for the things that truly matter. Your colleagues will begin to see you as someone who makes thoughtful choices, rather than someone who simply reacts to every request. This perception shift often leads to increased respect and better opportunities. Your romantic relationships will either deepen or end when you stop being constantly available. If your relationship was based on your partner's need for constant attention and your need to constantly give it, the relationship will struggle. But if your relationship has a foundation of mutual respect and genuine love, your new boundaries will actually strengthen the connection. Your partner will be attracted to your self-respect and your ability to maintain your own identity within the relationship. Friendships will also shift. Some friends will drift away when they realize they can no longer treat you as their personal support system, but the friends who remain will appreciate the more authentic version of you that emerges when you are not constantly in service mode. Your conversations will become deeper because you will be more present. When you choose to be present, family dynamics often present the greatest challenge when you stop being constantly available. Families develop systems where each person plays a specific role. And when one person changes their role, it forces everyone else to adjust. If you have been the family fixer, the family giver, or the family peacekeeper, your decision to limit your availability will create temporary chaos in the family system. This chaos is not evidence that you should return to your old patterns. It is evidence that the family system needed to change. Healthy families adapt to support the growth of individual members. Unhealthy families resist change and try to force individuals back into dysfunctional roles. The physical health will likely improve when you establish emotional boundaries. The stress of being constantly available, constantly giving, and constantly managing other people's emotions takes a tremendous toll on your body. When you reclaim your energy and use it more intentionally, your nervous system can finally relax. Sleep improves, anxiety decreases, your immune system strengthens, but perhaps the most profound change will be the emergence of your authentic self. When you are not constantly reactive to others' needs, you create space to discover what you actually want, what you actually think, and what you actually feel. Your intuition, which may have been buried under years of people-pleasing, will begin to resurface. This is what Jung meant by individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are, rather than who you think you should be or who others need you to be. It is the most important psychological work you can do, and it requires you to risk disappointing others in order to finally start honoring yourself. The practice of strategic unavailability is not about becoming cold, distant, or uncaring. It is about becoming intentional with your presence. When you are selective about when and how you share your time and energy, you can be fully present in the moments you choose to engage. Quality becomes more important than quantity. This requires you to develop new communication skills. You must learn to say no with kindness, but without apology. You must learn to explain your boundaries without justifying them extensively. You must learn to redirect requests without feeling guilty about not fulfilling them yourself. The goal is not to become unavailable to everyone and everything. The goal is to become available to the right people at the right times for the right reasons. This level of intentionality requires you to know yourself deeply, to understand your values, your goals, your energy patterns, and your limits. As you sustain this transformation over time, you will notice that you become more attractive to others, not less. People are drawn to those who know their own worth and honor their own boundaries. There is something magnetic about a person who has learned to say no to what does not serve them, so they can say yes to what truly matters. Your leadership abilities will emerge naturally as you model healthy boundaries for others. People will look to you as an example of how to live with integrity and self-respect. You will give others permission to value themselves by demonstrating how to value yourself. The ultimate freedom that comes from stopping your constant availability is the freedom to be authentically yourself. When you are not constantly managing other people's emotions, solving other people's problems, and meeting other people's expectations, you can finally focus on your own growth, your own goals, and your own happiness. This does not make you selfish, it makes you whole. And when you are whole, you have so much more to offer the world. Your service comes from choice rather than compulsion. Your love comes from abundance rather than need. Your presence becomes a gift rather than a given. Jung believed that the greatest gift we can give to the world is to become fully ourselves. When you stop being constantly available to everyone else's agenda, You finally become available to your own life's purpose. You stop living reactively and start living proactively. You stop being driven by fear and start being guided by wisdom. The ripple effects of this transformation extend far beyond your personal relationships. When you model healthy boundaries, you give others permission to do the same. When you demonstrate that self-respect is possible, you inspire others to find their own worth. When you show that authentic connection can exist without self-sacrifice, you help heal the collective wound that says love requires losing yourself. This is your invitation to step into a new way of being, to recognize that your worth does not depend on your usefulness, to understand that true love does not require constant availability, to accept that you can be both loving and boundaried, both generous and self-respecting, both connected and autonomous. When you stop being available to everything, you become truly available to what matters most. When you stop saying yes to everyone else's priorities, you finally have time for your own. When you stop being constantly present for others, you can finally be present for yourself. This is not the end of your relationships, it is the beginning of authentic ones. This is not the end of your service, it is the beginning of intentional contribution. This is not the end of your love, it is the beginning of love that includes yourself. Everything changes when you stop being constantly available because you change. And when you change from the inside out, your entire world transforms to match your new way of being. This is the power you have always possessed, but perhaps never fully claimed. This is your birthright as a human being, to live authentically, to love consciously, and to be present by choice rather than compulsion. Time has come to stop being available to everyone else's life and become available to your own. Your authentic self is waiting. Your real life is waiting. Your freedom is waiting. And it all begins the moment you decide that your presence is not a commodity to be consumed, but a gift to be shared, intentionally with those who truly value what you have to offer. Understanding the deeper mechanics of this transformation requires us to examine what happens in your nervous system when you make this shift. For years, your body has been conditioned to respond to every request, every need, every crisis with immediate action. Your nervous system has been stuck in a perpetual state of hypervigilance, always scanning for who might need you next, always preparing to spring into action for others. This chronic state of availability has rewired your brain to prioritize external demands over internal wisdom. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive decisions and long-term planning, has been hijacked by your limbic system's need to maintain social connections at any cost. You have literally trained your brain to see other people's needs as more urgent than your own. When you begin to reclaim your availability, your nervous system will initially interpret this as a threat to your survival. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, will sound warnings that you are putting your social connections at risk. You may experience physical symptoms, increased heart rate, shallow breathing, muscle tension, as your body tries to pull you back into old patterns of immediate availability. This is why the first few weeks of establishing boundaries feel so uncomfortable. You are not just changing behavior, you are rewiring neural pathways that have been reinforced for years or even decades. Your brain needs time to learn that saying no to some things does not mean losing everything. Your nervous system needs repeated evidence that you can maintain connection while also maintaining boundaries. The psychological concept of differentiation becomes crucial here. Differentiation is your ability to maintain your sense of self while remaining emotionally connected to others. People with poor differentiation lose themselves in relationships, becoming so focused on managing other people's emotions that they lose touch with their own. This is exactly what happens when you are constantly available. You become an extension of everyone else's needs, rather than a person with your own legitimate needs. Healthy differentiation allows you to care about others without being controlled by their emotional states. You can feel empathy without feeling compelled to fix everything. You can offer support without sacrificing your own well-being. This is not coldness. This is emotional maturity. The process of developing differentiation requires you to tolerate anxiety, both your own and others. When you first start limiting your availability, you will feel anxious about potentially losing relationships. Others may become anxious when they realize they can no longer rely on your constant presence. The key is learning to tolerate this anxiety without immediately rushing to relieve it through old patterns of overgiving. Jung wrote extensively about what he called the tension of opposites. In this case, you must learn to hold the tension between connection and autonomy, between caring and self-preservation, between generosity and boundaries. This tension is not a problem to be solved, but a creative force to be harnessed. It is in this tension that your authentic self emerges. Consider how this transformation affects your relationship with time itself. When you are constantly available, time becomes something that happens to you rather than something you actively choose. Your days are filled with reactions to other people's agendas. Your schedule is determined by who needs what and when they need it. You live in a perpetual state of responsiveness rather than intentionality. But when you reclaim your availability, you reclaim your relationship with time. You begin to see time as a finite resource that deserves to be allocated thoughtfully. You start making conscious choices about how to spend your hours rather than simply responding to whoever makes the loudest demand. This shift from reactive to proactive living is one of the most profound changes you will experience. Your relationship with solitude will also transform dramatically. Many people who are constantly available are actually afraid of being alone with themselves. They stay busy helping others, partly because it distracts them from having to face their own thoughts, feelings, and unresolved. When you limit your availability to others, you automatically create more space for yourself. This can initially feel uncomfortable if you are not used to solitude. You may discover thoughts and feelings that you have been avoiding. You may realize that you have been using busyness to escape from aspects of your life that need attention. But solitude, when embraced rather than feared, becomes a source of tremendous strength and clarity. It is in solitude that you reconnect with your own desires, your own dreams, your own voice. It is in quiet moments alone that your intuition can finally speak louder than the constant chatter of other people's needs and expectations. The greater benefits of reclaiming your availability cannot be overstated. Creativity requires mental space, uninterrupted time, and the freedom to follow ideas wherever they lead. When you are constantly available to others, you never have the sustained focus necessary for creative work. Your mind is always partially occupied with thinking about who might need you next or what problem you might need to solve. But when you protect your time and energy, you create the conditions necessary for creativity to flourish. Ideas that have been buried under layers of obligation begin to surface. Projects that you have been putting off for years suddenly become possible. The part of you that dreams, imagines, and creates finally has space to breathe. Since creative awakening often surprises people who have been stuck in patterns of constant availability. They discover talents they forgot they had, interests they thought they had lost, and aspirations that had been dormant for years. The energy that was once scattered across dozens of other people's priorities becomes focused and available for your own creative expression. Your sleep patterns will likely improve as you establish better boundaries around your availability. When you are constantly managing other people's emotions and problems, your mind remains active, even when you try to rest. You may find yourself lying awake thinking about someone else's crisis or planning how to help with someone else's problems. This mental hyperactivity makes deep, restorative sleep nearly impossible as you limit your availability and establish clear boundaries around when you are accessible to others. Your mind learns that there are times when you are truly off duty. This allows your nervous system to downregulate, your stress hormones to decrease, and your body to enter the deep rest necessary for physical and emotional recovery. The ripple effects extend into your physical health in ways you might not expect. Chronic stress from being constantly available suppresses immune function, increases inflammation, and accelerates cellular aging. When you reclaim your energy and use it more intentionally, your body can redirect resources toward healing and maintenance, rather than constantly responding to stress. Many people report improvements in digestion, skin conditions, headaches, and chronic pain when they establish healthier boundaries around their availability. The body keeps score of emotional patterns, and when those patterns shift toward greater self-respect and boundary setting, physical health often improved correspondingly. Your financial situation may also change when you start being constantly available. People who struggle with boundaries often have difficulty charging appropriately for their services, saying no to unprofitable opportunities, or investing in their own growth and development. They give away their time and expertise freely, often to people who do not truly value what they receive. When you develop a healthier relationship with your own availability, you naturally begin to value your time and skills more appropriately. You become more selective about opportunities, choosing quality over quantity. You invest in relationships and projects that offer genuine reciprocity, rather than one-sided giving. The spiritual dimensions of this transformation are equally profound. Many spiritual traditions emphasize the importance of solitude, contemplation, and inner work. When you are constantly available to others, you have little time or energy for spiritual practices, self-reflection, or connecting with whatever you consider sacred or meaningful. Reclaiming your availability creates space for spiritual growth and connection. You may find yourself drawn to meditation, prayer, nature, art, or other practices that nourish your soul. The constant noise of other people's needs quiets enough for you to hear your own inner voice, your own spiritual guidance, your own connection to something larger than yourself. This spiritual awakening often brings with it a sense of purpose that is internally rather than externally driven. Instead of finding meaning through how much you can do for others, you begin to find meaning through who you are becoming and how you are growing. Your sense of purpose becomes less about being useful and more about being authentic. The transformation in your decision-making abilities will amaze you. When you are constantly available, you make decisions quickly and often reactively, usually based on what others need or want from you. There is little time for careful consideration, weighing options, or consulting your own wisdom. But when you create space around your availability, you also create space around your decisions. You can take time to consider what you actually want, not just what others want from you. You can evaluate opportunities based on your own criteria rather than simply responding to external pressure. Your choices become more aligned with your values and long-term goals. This improved decision-making extends into every area of your life. You choose relationships that truly nourish you, rather than settling for connections based solely on need or convenience. You make career choices that align with your authentic interests and abilities, rather than simply responding to whatever opportunities present themselves. You create a lifestyle that reflects your actual preferences, rather than accumulating everyone else's expectations. The legacy you create when you model healthy boundaries extends far beyond your immediate circle. Children who observe adults with healthy boundaries learn that self-respect is possible and necessary. They develop their own capacity for boundary setting, rather than learning that love requires self-sacrifice. Colleagues who witness your transformation may be inspired to examine their own patterns of availability and boundary setting. Friends and family members often begin their own process of reclaiming their time and energy after seeing the positive changes in your life. You become a living example that it is possible to be both loving and boundaried, both generous and self-respecting, both connected and autonomous. This example gives others permission to find their own balance between giving and receiving, between serving others and honoring themselves. The paradox of this entire transformation is that by becoming less available to everything, you become more genuinely available to what truly matters. Your presence becomes more focused, more intentional, and therefore more powerful. The people who do receive your time and attention experience a more present, more engaged, more authentic version of you. Your relationships deepen because they are chosen rather than compulsive. Your work improves because you focus on projects that align with your strengths and interests. Your creativity flourishes because you have the mental and emotional space necessary for inspiration and innovation. This is the ultimate teaching of this transformation, that true availability is not about quantity but quality. It is not about being present for everyone, but about being fully present for the people and activities that truly matter to you. It is not about giving everything to everybody, but about giving your best to what deserves your best. When you stop being available to everyone and everything, you finally become available to your own life. You stop living according to other people's priorities and start living according to your own values. You stop being driven by external demands and start being guided by internal wisdom. You stop existing as a response to the world and start creating your own meaningful place within it. This is your moment of choice. This is your opportunity to reclaim what has always been yours: your time, your energy, your presence, your authentic self. The world will adjust to your new boundaries because it has no choice.
Tomorrow is a direct result of your
Some people
choices
will
right now.
respect your transformation immediately.
Final challenge.
Others
Stand up.
will eventually come to
Feel the
appreciate the
strength in your
more
body.
authentic
Take a deep
version of
breath.
you that
This is the
emerges.
moment you decide.
Those who
Will you
cannot
continue the
accept
old
your
story of
growth
self-pity,
were
or will you
never
begin writing
truly
your success
aligned
story?
with your highest good anyway.
The
Your
world
real
needs
life
your
is
greatness.
waiting for you to claim it.
Your dreams
Your
matter.
authentic relationships are
Your
waiting to be
potential is too
formed.
precious
Your
to waste on
creative potential is
self-pity.
waiting to be expressed.
The time
Your
for
spiritual
transformation is
growth
now.
is waiting to unfold.
Your future
Your
self is
deepest
watching
joy
this moment,
is waiting to
hoping
be
you'll make the choice to
experienced.
change.
And it
Don't
all
let them
becomes
down.
possible the
Don't let
moment you
yourself
decide
down.
that your
Remember, the
availability
pain of
is not
discipline weighs
a
ounces. The
right
pain
that
of
others
regret
can
weighs
demand, but a
tons.
gift that
As
you
you leave
consciously
today, carry
choose to
this truth.
share with
You were
those who
born for
truly
impact,
value the magnificent
designed for
person
greatness, and equipped for
you are
success.
becoming.